Yeah. So let we can go ahead and actually just get started with you guys introducing yourselves, letting everybody know, there's a little bit about your personal background, and then also the Filmland background, and then I'll have some kind of more specific questions about Filmland that I'm excited to learn about.
Okay.
Go, Troy.
Sure. Hey, my name is Troy Bolotnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Filmland Spirits. I live here in Los Angeles, where the company is based, although we do all of our work in Kentucky. I have a very varied background in the entertainment industry, in corporate, done a lot of creative work and a lot of technical work as well.
Yep, and I'm Charlie Flint. I'm one of Troy's co-founders. I'm responsible for operations at Filmland. My background is kind of like Troy's, a little bit all over the place. I actually started my career in the Army, and then moved to Los Angeles. We can get to it in a minute, but where I worked in the entertainment and internet industry for a number of years before transitioning into digital marketing. And then now obviously work for a whiskey brand.
You guys have resumes, man. You've got a background.
That's a very polite way of saying we're old.
Yeah, you don't want to see my LinkedIn. A lot of scrolling.
You can be old and have 65 years in one industry. I'm talking about the variation there. I mean, that's awesome. I'm really excited to hear about the journey there, because I spoke with you guys briefly at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Loved the way your labels looked. Then immediately I was like, this is a cool booth. And thankfully, the guys over at the Film and Whiskey podcast knew you already. And so they were like, "Oh yeah, come talk to Charlie and Troy." And I was like, "Sweet, I'm excited to hear the background." So I got a bit of that background, but I really want to dig into it a little bit. You guys decided to combine your love for movies with your love for whiskey. Where on your journey to this point did you fall in love with the first of those things? Was it film first, or was it whiskey first? And just kind of walk me through those resumes that we just talked about. So I guess, Troy, if you want to start,
Sure.
Walk me through what you fell in love with first.
Right. Well, it was definitely movies, because I couldn't drink when I was 6.
I was waiting for Troy to tell the story of sitting on his grandpa's lap drinking whiskey, right?
That didn't happen. No, I fell in love with movies very early on. The first movie I can remember, Charlie always says this is my favorite movie. It's not. It's just the first movie I can remember was seeing in the theater was Logan's Run. Way back when, in the mid 70s, when I was a little kid. And I was enthralled, because I was entertained and I was terrified all at the same time. And that really started it. And I remember deciding at that age I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to write movies. And I just started writing plays and scripts for like my classmates at school, and making my classmates put on plays and things like that, and just fell in love with writing in the movies. Whiskey came later. So whiskey came probably almost 10 years ago, maybe a little more than 10 years ago. Just started. Charlie and I have known each other for almost 30 years, and we've been friends that whole time. And he lives in Atlanta, I live in LA, and we both just kind of started getting into bourbon separately, like without even really talking about it, even though we talk all the time. And then when we realized we were both getting into it, and maybe this was 2011, 2010, somewhere in there, we decided to start meeting in Kentucky every year. We called it our pilgrimage to the motherland. And so we would meet and go for like 4 days at a time, usually, sometimes 5. And we'd go to like between 4 and 6 distilleries a day, which is not, it sounds like, oh, okay, that is not easy to do and requires a lot of planning.
Yeah.
we have spreadsheets, a spreadsheet. Yeah. We've never told this story, but we have a spreadsheet called Distillery Mania. And it's how it's a Google share that we would plan our trips. But we would go to these distilleries like crazy people, and, so many a day. And then we just fell in love with it. We fell in love with the bourbon and the culture and the cocktails and the people, and especially the art and the science of it all.
Wow, that is quite the story. So now let's dig in, because you mentioned a few things that I think maybe we'll cover as Charlie talks about his background here. Because you mentioned you started off in the military. Is that correct, Charlie?
Yeah. And as an adult, going out of college, I went into the Army for 5 years. Yep.
Okay, I'm real. I have questions I want to ask, but I want to let you go first. So I apologize. I'm jumping the gun here because I'm getting excited. Just walk me through how you fell in love with movies and or whiskey, and how that journey went for you.
Yeah, sure. Besides having been in the military myself, I was an army brat. So my dad was in the military, and we grew up moving all over the world. And that usually meant that we were on an army base somewhere, often abroad, and the TV, like our TV options were limited to like one TV station, the Armed Forces Network, right? So whatever was on AFN, and it usually wasn't interesting or relevant for a kid. So the movie theater on base was where, especially on the weekends, they always made a point of showing kid appropriate stuff. So in the evenings they'd probably have whatever was the adult relevant movie at the time. But during the day, it was matinees. And so that was the escape. That was getting to stay in touch with kind of American culture, see the things that all the kids who had just moved over would be talking about, whatever, Star Wars or something like that might happen to be playing. And, we would hear about, but wouldn't know about. So used to love going to the movie theater, in particular as a kid, being able to see that. And then it just kind of evolved. I mean, I was I didn't know I wanted to be a writer, kind of the same way that Troy did. I went through my college degree was in international relations, but all through high school, all through college, I would write, but I was writing for myself. I wasn't writing screenplays. I was just writing. And then I went in the military. And when I got out of the military, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I went to work for a small college in Indiana. And it was kind of early days of the internet. And I started teaching myself how to code and was, like learning about the internet. And back at that time, Troy and some partners had created one of the very first pieces of entertainment on the internet called The Spot. It was basically Melrose Place or a soap opera on the internet. Got a ton of buzz for the time that it was in. It got a ton of traffic for the time that it was in. And so I kind of, for fun, to teach myself, wrote myself into their storyline. And they called me up one day. I'm sitting at my office in Indiana, and they called me up and were like, "Hey, do you want to come to LA and work for us?" And I was like, "Well, this is a bit of a stretch. I've never met you. I don't know you. For all I know, you're a bunch of weirdos working out of a garage somewhere." And so they flew me out. They were a bunch of weirdos working out of a garage somewhere, but I took the leap and moved to LA, and that's how Troy and I first met. Like he said, 30 plus years ago, and where I kind of transitioned into actually starting to work in entertainment adjacent. And then ultimately Troy and I began writing together, wrote a number of things together, whether it was film or TV or just, general concepts. And now of course we write ideas for our products, for our whiskey products.
Wow. I mean, it's one of those journeys that you hear and it sounds like, what are the odds of that? But then as you're living it out, you're like, of course, this is what's happening. But you look back and you're like, I mean, what are the odds of that,
Right.
So then you mentioned about 10 years ago or about 2011, if I remember, was about when you guys started getting into whiskey, and that happened separately. So walk me through. You move out to LA, you're working with Troy and his team. And then you guys walk me through when you stopped working together, but kept in touch, like what was going on through that period. And it sounds like then you guys both got into whiskey or bourbon in that period as well.
Yeah. So I'll start, Charlie, and then I'll pass it to you.
Sure.
We had the internet episodic show that I created with some partners that Charlie was talking about. It's funny. It was 1995 when we created it. So the web was only a couple of years old, and most people didn't know what the internet was yet. We had the biggest, most trafficked site on the internet for a while, which at that time was 250,000 unique users. But we were giants in a tiny pond, and it got a lot of press coverage at the time. But most people don't remember what it is now. But it was kind of revolutionary at the time, and it was purchased by a joint venture between Intel, CAA, and Gray Advertising at the time. And so we sold it to them, and then we actually left, and myself and my partners founded a new company and did it again. And Charlie came along and worked at that new company. Then we sold that company to America Online, which was the biggest player in the internet back in the mid to late 90s. And we built a whole nother entertainment division for America Online. Then there was some top level politics that happened and budgets got cut. and they came to us and said, look, this amazing thing you just built where you've exceeded your goals in half the time we expected, there's no more budget for it, so we're going to have to shut the whole thing down. And I think that I went on to form another entertainment venture with my partners, but Charlie, you then.
Yeah, that's really when I got into digital marketing, which I mentioned earlier. So, that's when I diverged and went down a separate path and started working in digital marketing. But we stayed we were, we had become friends at that point. We were hanging out on the weekends. And that's when Troy and I started writing together for fun, really. We wrote a number of screenplays together. So we'd get together, nights or weekends, or do it separately and then email to each other and then have, follow up to compare notes, so sometimes we work together, sometimes we work separately. But that's probably when we started writing together the most.
I thought you were going to say that's when we started drinking together the most.
Drinking together the most too, yeah.
Because we weren't into whiskey then, but we would go out. We were, it was our friend group, and we would go out every Friday and Saturday night, and there was a lot of carousing going on.
Right.
But so we wrote together a number of things, and then we ended up forming another entertainment company. Actually, we don't have to go through the entire resume, but formed another digital centric entertainment company, and there we created and sold a couple of TV series, and then this was going into 2000, the internet in general crashed. And so we wound down that company. And I decided I had a kid and decided it was time to Hollywood. I'd had enough of Hollywood, right? I knew that entertainment wasn't going to be a career for me. And if I was going to be in digital marketing, then I didn't necessarily need to be in Los Angeles, especially since I had a kid and wanted to find, pastures with more affordable real estate, right? So I moved to Atlanta at that time, and that's kind of where I've lived ever since. And then Troy and I stayed in touch over the years, even after we had kind of moved to separate coasts. I think over the years we still wrote a couple of things, especially earlier on, for fun together. And then, like he said, we remained friends the entire time. I won't go through it beat by beat, but I moved to China. I took a couple of jobs internationally during this period. I lived in England for a while. I moved to China for 5 years. And that's kind of where I first started getting into whiskey with any kind of meaningful way, because in China there's a very common spirit. It's the number one consumed spirit in the world. It's called Baijiu, and it's very distinctive to the American palate. It's pretty funky, has a very strong flavor. Most non-Chinese don't necessarily love it, but it's ubiquitous in China. And so what would happen is, and when you go out to dinner with Chinese, whether it's friends or work dinners or whatever, that they love to try to get the foreigner hammered on Baijiu.
Baijiu.
And so what would happen is, when I would come back to the U.S., I would load up on American whiskey, and I would take it back to China with me. And then when I would go to meals, and they were like, "Let's bust out the Baijiu and drink all of this we can and watch you get sick," I'd go, "Well, let's drink American whiskey instead," right? And it was, and so, and back in those days, I started with Jack, and then back in those days, you could actually find Weller, and so I started taking Weller, and Weller Black, Weller 12-year, and that was kind of my go-to. Was I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to take Weller Black Label and give, and everybody loved it. And they would drink it and they'd get sick because their palates weren't used to it. But I was slowly adjusting to whiskey. And then when I moved back to the US, I just kind of, that then became something I was really interested in. And I started, going to some distilleries locally. And then Troy and I very quickly circled up with one another and started taking the trips that he mentioned earlier. And he and I both built up, ridiculous, like a lot of people that have this as a hobby. We built up huge I know people with way bigger collections than mine, but reasonably sized collections. And, we're running around on the weekends and nights chasing bourbon just like everybody else, until it evolves from a hobby into a business.
Wow. I mean, I that story fascinates me for a lot of reasons. So first of all, I think, especially since it's dry January, there's a really cool parallel to draw here with one of my favorite aspects of whiskey, or my favorite aspects of bourbon, is it brings people together, and
For
it's
sure.
it's something that we can all have in common. If we have differences during the day, we can come together and have a glass of bourbon, and it's a reason to get back together with people, to hang out with them. It's a reason to talk to them. And I think it's really interesting that for you guys, after you had that split for a while, just in location, writing and movies was that link for you guys, which I really find interesting, because I'm coming from a perspective where that wasn't, that's not a part of my
Sure.
life. But I also do want to get into how you guys got into whiskey. So I love that story. That is the most unique way I've heard somebody getting into whiskey, I think, is that you were in a foreign
Whiskey saved
world.
me many, many times.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'm still jealous about you getting Weller 12 easily, but I
Those were the
wasn't of
good old
drinking
days,
age,
my
so
friend.
yeah, yeah, I missed a lot of the good old days. But Troy, so how did you find yourself getting into whiskey? And then at what point did you guys start talking about it, or like, was there like a glass shatter moment where you're like, wait, you're drinking a lot of bourbon too? I've been drinking a lot of bourbon. I'm interested in that story.
Yeah. So around the time probably Charlie was still in China, um, in another business I had that I later sold before we did this. Just a couple of things happened in a row. I got invited to a very good friend's destination wedding in Florida, and it happened. It was, I can't remember the name of the hotel. It was a very fancy hotel, but there was like a bourbon and steak restaurant in the hotel. So we went to dinner, and people were drinking bourbon. And I'm like, well, I don't really drink a lot of bourbon, but I wanted to fit in or whatever. So I tried it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Okay. Didn't think about it a lot more. Then, like a month later, I went to a trade show for the industry I was in, and it was in Denver. And they took us to a restaurant that happened to have like a bourbon tasting table there. And at that point I started like tasting, like they couldn't drag me away from the bar. I was just sitting there tasting. I'm like, what about that one? What about that one? And I wasn't getting like drunk or anything, because I was just tasting little bits. And I was like, this stuff has flavor. This has character. This is like better than drinking wine. Like there's more to this. And then for that same company, I had a business trip to New Orleans. And I had my business partner and I went, but I invited Charlie to come meet me there. So as the business part was ending, he would meet me there, and we would hang out together. And we did. And I think it was then that I was like, "You're into bourbon?" And you're like, "You're into bourbon?" And
Then it became like a Sazerac battle. We were determined to drink Sazeracs at every single restaurant in like New Orleans, but
and I think that might be the first distillery we actually went to together, which wasn't bourbon, but it was a rum distillery in New Orleans. Yeah. That was the first one. We were like, what do you want to do today? And I'm like, well, I think Charlie, because he's the planner, was like, there's a distill. So we went to it, and it was really neat. It was really cool. And we were like, oh, we should do this more. And then I think after that, we started planning our first trip to Kentucky.
That is awesome. I love the idea of those trips to Kentucky, and I can't even imagine the planning behind them, because when I take a trip, I feel like I have to jam stuff in order to see the people I need to see, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
that many distilleries in a day, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, over the years, we've had people that, friends that would be like, oh, I'd love to join you guys. And we're like, all right, well, let's show you the spreadsheet so you know what you're signing up for. And without fail, they're all like, "Oh no, I'm out. Like, I'm not doing that with you."
This is not a casual venture. Like if lunch needs to be skipped to fit in another distillery, lunch gets skipped.
Oh, we usually did skip lunch. In fact,
it's a protein bar on the road between Lexington and Louisville.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it would have to be that way to fit in all those distilleries, but it's so gorgeous down there, and there's just so much to see. It truly doesn't get old. But
it was on one of those trips that we were driving between Lexington and Louisville, and I was staring out the window because he always drives, and I was looking at the cows and the pastures going by, whatever, and just something hit me, and I turned to him, and I remember saying, "We have to do our own brand. We have to do this one day," and that was probably now it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, but it was a few years after that we got started on it.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was curious about. Now, at that point, did you know it was going to be movie based, or did you just want to develop a bourbon and then the movie came later?
No. So I wanted to do a brand. I mean, we talked about distillery brand. We talked about all different combinations, and but I was like, Charlie's in Atlanta. He's got kids. My kids were younger then. We're like, neither of us are moving to get into Kentucky together in the same state. And we came up with this idea of doing a bi-coastal brand kind of thing. We'd actually called it bi-coastal bourbon at one point. I've never told anybody that.
Yeah,
And
that just got stolen. Thanks, Troy.
yeah,
Somebody's about to
right,
launch that.
Yeah.
Like,
right. And I think somebody's already got a name out there like that. But and so I played with that. Started writing plans up and things like that. And it just, we both had other jobs, and then one day I was talking to another friend of mine, Rick, who is also a podcast host, and he started helping me like develop the idea. And we came up with a million different ideas. And as soon as we'd have an idea, I'd call Charlie and he'd tell us why it was good or bad or whatever. And then he'd give a bunch of ideas. And then just one day, like really, because we'd come up with an idea and then find out somebody else already had something similar, or the trademark was taken, or the URL was taken, or whatever. And then one day we're sitting there kind of like a little bit frustrated. And Rick just started interviewing me. And he started asking me about stuff. And I started talking about writing in the movies. And he stopped me and he said, the passion you're talking about writing in the movies is the same passion you talk about whiskey. And he's like, let's find a way to do them together. And like Filmland Spirits, like, we were like movie land, movie time, movie land, Filmland. And it just came. And then Rise of the Robots came like right after that, the name for it. And because we knew Rick and I had hit a point where we knew we wanted to do colorful, fun labels that stood out. Because I spent a lot of time in, the aisles of Total Wine and other stores like that, looking and going, well, rum is fun, tequila's fun, vodka's fun, wine is fun. People buy based on the label, or at least they get intrigued by it. The liquid's got to be good to buy again. But the whiskey aisle, it's all kind of beige and brown and pictures of dogs or birds or old men or something like that. And I thought, why can't we have a whiskey that stands out with really fun labels, but also be really high quality stuff? And so once we connected Filmland with colorful labels, I thought, well, how do we have an endless playground, like an endless canvas to keep creating with that? And we're like, well, B movies are kind of fun and outrageous, so that kind of goes together. And then boom, I was thinking of the rhythm of how B movie titles are, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. There's always like too many words in it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where Rise of the Robots actually was originally Rise of the Robot Bartenders. So because it was Rise of the Robot Bartenders, it had that rhythm. We ended up having to take bartenders off because it didn't fit on the label.
Okay.
But that's how that all came. And then called Charlie and like, I think we got it. And he's like, he couldn't poke holes in it. I remember that. I'm like, come on, tell me why it's bad. And he like couldn't poke it. He's like, wait, I don't know. I think that's pretty good. And then it just, then I sat down and spent 3 or 4 months of my life writing a business plan, and then got on Zoom and started raising money.
Wow. And now what year was this all happening?
It was 2020.
Okay.
During COVID. So I was at another gig and I left that gig in like July of 2020. Took a month to like kind of clear my head, and then started meeting with Rick almost on a daily basis. We did it in his backyard, and probably came upon 3 months or so later, it was December when I think we started talking about Filmland. And then I wrote the business plan in January and started raising money in March.
Wow. So wow, there's a lot to, I mean, that's so interesting. I think the biggest thing that I'm taking away from that both your guys' stories that I really enjoy is that writing was a passion for you guys. Whiskey was a passion for you guys, and neither one of them was really like, let's use that to make profit off the other. So it wasn't like, I like writing movies. Whiskey's big right now. I don't even really like whiskey, but let's make a whiskey brand and make something. And it wasn't, I'm really into whiskey, but I want to start a brand, and I just, I need some flair. People like movies. Let's do movies. They were both like passions for you guys, which makes me curious, Charlie, when Troy calls you up and he says, "Oh, we came up with it. It's going to be Filmland. Or maybe he didn't have the name yet, but we're going to do movies and whiskey." What was your reaction to that? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, like Troy, one of my superpowers is I'm able to take, and we've done it over the years. It goes back to when we first started coming up with entertainment concepts and then movie and TV ideas. Is I'm able to write like the negative review headline for something. So, like if it's whatever, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, I can envision in my head like the bad Rotten Tomatoes review saying like Attack of the this is a bad example, but Attack of the Boring Tomatoes or whatever, right? And so
Right.
when Troy throws stuff at me, I can usually come up with like the negative review title. And yeah, when he called and started talking about Filmland, I was like, all right, well, I can't like crap all over this. I can't come up with any, like I can't find my negative review. I feel like this is solid, which wasn't the case with some of the things that we've kicked around over the years before it. So yeah, that's like it was like this sounds fun. It ties into the passions that we have. It ties into our backgrounds and our experience. So it kind of just took on a life of its own after that. Really, it just began to roll.
So that's where I started to get curious about your creative process, and that's what I'd really like to talk about next. Is you've got movies and you've got whiskey, and how did you, as you move forward, especially when you started developing the first one, how did you relate the two? And were you looking for a storyline to fit like the flavor profile or just the overall aesthetic of the whiskey? Or did you have this kind of B movie in mind? And so then you're doing tastings and you're sourcing out whatever you want to use and you're trying to come up with something that just felt right for the movie. How does that creative process work?
It kind of, like we always say, kind of glibly, like the liquid is the story and the story is the liquid, right? And we say there's no set rule, like it has to be story first and liquid. It's, for the most part, it's been story and then the liquid, then we find a liquid to match it. But we also have some stuff coming in the future that was liquid that we created a story for. And one of the bottles you're sitting there was kind of meet in the middle. Our Town at the End of Tomorrow was kind of, we had the idea and the idea for what the liquid should be, and then we sought out and found that liquid.
Yeah.
But that's really it. Like for Rise of the Robots, like I said, that's our rye. That's our 94 proof rye. And then we have Rise of the Robots Extended Cut is now the cask strength. Extended cut, when you see extended cut from us, it means cask strength. It's like when there's an extended cut of a movie, there's more scenes. For us, extended cut means more proof.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But Rise started with a title. And then I sat down one day, and we were actually doing the business plan without the story yet. And then I just sat down one day and it just sort of hit me, and I started writing, and I wrote a treatment for Rise of the Robots. And it's like a treatment's a 2 to 3 page story of a movie. It's like before you write the script, you write a story of the movie, so you can get, if you're working for a studio, you can get approval to go write the script. And that's what I wrote. I started with the treatment and just kind of went from there. I like that. And Moonlight Mayhem, we sort of had the story. We definitely had the story before the title. And so then I remember that me, Charlie, and Rick was in that, the three of us. Charlie was in Atlanta. We were on Zoom brainstorming that for hours until we came up with Moonlight Mayhem. And then, but Town at the End of Tomorrow is very different, because Town at the End of Tomorrow, I think I came up with that title, and it was supposed to be a totally different story than it is. But that title has just been stuck in my head for a couple of years. And then I've like, this has to be Town at the End of Tomorrow has to be a time travel story. I'm a Doctor Who nerd. It has to be a time travel story. And so it has to be an aged whiskey. It has to be an old whiskey, because that's so integral to what the story is. So Town at the End of Tomorrow, the future wants its bourbon, is the tagline. And it's a 9-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon. And it's our first Kentucky, pure 100% Kentucky product. And even though everything we do in Kentucky, some of the liquid comes from other places. But, and I'll tell you the story real quick and you'll get the sense. But Town at the End of Tomorrow takes place in Bardstown in Kentucky, about 40, 50 years in the future, when aged bourbon has run out. And it's caused riots and violence. So the government steps in and passes what they call the Unbonded Act, which means when bourbon turns 2 years old, you have to sell it. You can't let it age further. So our heroes are a couple of cousins. They're 5th generation distillers, and they miss aged bourbon. So they turn their distillery into a time machine, travel back to Bardstown in 1820, where they have to borrow the aged bourbon and bring it to the future. So that in that case, the story and the liquid are really intertwined with each other.
I really love that, and I actually didn't realize that connection, I guess, until you said it, because I was tasting these as I mentioned it in preparation so that I can tell people what I think of them. And it you can taste the age. Like, I actually didn't know the age as I was doing this tasting. I didn't have it in front of me at the time, and you can taste it. I mean, it tastes like it is a more aged bourbon than this is Town at the Edge of Tomorrow, the
Yeah.
Moonlight Mayhem on my left hand side here, which is still, it's got a very sweet forward palate to it, whereas the Town at the Edge of Tomorrow has more of a dusty barrel kind of oaky note. And I can totally see that connection. So is that moving forward something you guys are kind of striving for, is to get the two more and more connected and develop the stories, or what's your guys' plan for that?
Look, if you asked our head of marketing, he would say yes. He's
Yeah,
always pushing us. He's always pushing us to have a connection between the two. And bourbon
hmm,
plays into Moonlight Mayhem as well. And if we have a moment later, we'll tell you the story of that one. But
absolutely.
we have an endless list of ideas. I've been saying lately, we have more ideas than we will ever be able to put out as products in our lifetime. So we're, and then we keep coming up with new ideas. I can't tell you what it is, but Charlie came up with an idea last week that I freaking love. And so that will be a product one day, but we can't talk about it now. But
Okay.
so that's a new one that we weren't even planning on doing. And that concept, the liquid and the story are completely tied together. Right. So that's, we know the liquid and we know the story. It's like it all happened at the same time, on that. And it's like a lot of writing process. We kind of riff off of each other without even realizing it sometimes. Because I was telling him
Hmm.
about this thing and this opportunity, and we could do this. And we had this very old idea for a liquid that was kind of like this. And then all of that somehow fed into Charlie's brain. And I'm on an airplane and I get a text from him with this story. And I'm like, oh my gosh. My response, what did I say? I said, I kind of love this.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
my
you kind of
response.
love it. Yeah, I woke up with it in my head. It was like that
Yeah.
morning I woke up with it in my head and was like, all right, I got to find some time to quick write these down before I forget it. So yeah.
Wow. And so then what is, let's go ahead and get into it. What's the connection with the Moonlight Mayhem?
Sure. So
How's the story tie in?
Moonlight Mayhem, a saga of werewolves and bourbon. So this takes place in a world where the dominant species on the planet are werewolves, and humans have been separated off into their own neighborhoods and have to stay separate. And our hero, Tommy, who's on the bottle there, he's a human who works at the local bourbon dive bar on Hollywood Boulevard called The Den, and it's where all the werewolves hang out at night. It's a little like American Graffiti. The werewolves all go cruising on Hollywood Boulevard and hang out at the Den. So Tommy goes to work one day and he sees this beautiful woman, Sylvain, at the bar, and it's like love at first sight. Turns out she's the sister of the leader of the pack of the werewolves. And now they're in love, and she has to decide whether she wants to marry him or have him for lunch. So it's sort of, we call it Romeo and Juliet with fangs.
Yeah, nice. That's another entertaining aspect of this, because you guys provide a lot of the background of the movies on your website, and that kind of gives a more fun way to research the whiskey when you're drinking it. Um, Whereas, I've always said I'm a geek for the website of the whiskey that I'm drinking, looking it up, seeing what the notes are, seeing what the background is, and so that's kind of a fun twist on it, that you've got this kind of story that goes with it, and it makes it a little bit. It adds like a layer to it that other ones don't really have. Now,
Yeah,
I'm
on the
go
bottle,
ahead.
we have, like, on one side of the bottle, the left side is all about the story. So it's got a synopsis of the movie, it's got the characters, their headshots, their bios, and then it does have a QR code which you scan. You go to the website where you can get trailer for the movie. You get storyboards. I don't know if you've been to the website recently, because in a few weeks ago we put storyboards up.
Okay.
Yeah, like extensive storyboards, really fun, sort of interactive for the movie. We also have script pages from the movie that you can read, and you can download the movie poster if you want. In addition to, of
Wow.
course, we have merchandise, so you can buy the shirts and you can buy the movie posters and all of that as well.
And I
So
mean,
Charles got one on.
well, yeah, I mean, what a cool idea for people who are also intrigued by movies. The Film and Whiskey guys, I mean, they didn't have enough, or they couldn't say enough good things about it. They thought it was
Yeah,
so
we like
awesome. And
Bob and Brad. We like those guys. That was
Yeah,
the
they're
first
awesome.
podcast we did when we launched last year.
Yeah.
It was
yes,
a
they are
Nashville.
great guys. I talked to them for quite a while down at Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and they, like I said, they couldn't say enough good things about it. It's such an interesting take, and I think for this dry January, that's one of the reasons I felt this episode was so fitting, is because you can kind of get a quick deep dive into a movie lover's life, the types of things you can look at in those storyboards and things like that, that somebody who just casually consumes movies might not typically look into. And that makes it really exciting. But turning to the liquid in the bottles, as you said, the liquid is the story. I got 2 bottles in front of me here. What are your guys' personal favorites and why? What do you like about the flavors of these?
Charlie, you want me to take that?
Yeah, you go
So
first, Troy.
what I was going to say, it was actually a great transition because I was thinking, we are talking about the packaging and the branding and the stories, which are integral. But if the liquid in that bottle isn't as amazing as what's on the bottle, then we're not doing what we set out to do, which is create, repeat and lifetime fans and consumers, right? We don't want to just sell one bottle. We want this to be somebody's go-to. So everything that we put on the market originally, Moonlight Mayhem Extended Cut, Rise of the Robots, those have all won either gold or double gold medals at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, as well as gold medals at other competitions. The new products we haven't had a chance to submit yet, but Rise of the Robots Extended Cut, which many people believe is even better than our Rise of the Robots, which is a fun debate we like to have. And then Town at the End of Tomorrow as well. So we'll hopefully get a chance to submit those early next year. In terms of favorite, it's hard because, it's like people ask that all the time. It's like, well, now you're like asking me to pick my favorite kid, right? I have one. I just can't talk about it. Right. But it really varies because, we fall in love with the new thing like everybody else. But that Moonlight Mayhem that's in front of you, just every time we have it, it just gets better and better. Right. And then we spent a long time in love with Moonlight Mayhem Extended Cut. It gets reviewed. Like in the winter edition of Whiskey Advocate this year, they reviewed 150 different whiskeys. We tied for first place for best bourbon with that.
Wow.
And in American Whiskey Magazine, Peggy Noe Stevens, who many of your listeners may know who she is, founder of Women in Bourbon, very influential reviewer and whiskey expert. She gave that Moonlight Mayhem Extended Cut a 9.1, which the last thing I found that she gave something similar to that ended up winning Whiskey of the year she did it. So it was very high praise. We brag about it. It was very high praise and very grateful for that. But I'd say right now, it's between the 2 bottles. I know it's going to seem like it's a setup, but the 2 bottles in front of you are probably competing for my favorite right now. Even though Charlie and I are both, and I'll let you we're both big rye guys, really big rye guys. But right now, I'm kind of in love with both of those. But Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to go the other way, and it's with product that isn't in front of Chris right now, but we are both big rye guys. When we created Rise of the Robots, regular proof, 94 proof, our intent was to create a blend that we, not everybody loves rye the same way they love bourbon, right? Like there are a lot more bourbon drinkers than there are like rye drinkers. And so our intent in creating Rise of the Robots was to create a more approachable rye. We wanted something that, when an average drinker gave it a shot and tasted it, would maybe be like, you know what? I don't normally like rye, but I really like this. And it was kind of, it was actually great to have that reinforced at Bardstown when we did the Bourbon Festival, because a lot of people would come up and go, you know what? I don't drink rye. Thanks, but I'm not going to try it. Or, all right, fine, I'll try it. And then we heard a lot of people go, you know what? I actually like that. Okay. Or I really like that, even though I don't normally like rye. When we created the extended cut, the high proof version of Rise of the Robots, the intent was to create like the rye that we would drink. So looking for the flavor profiles, Troy and I both like very minty ryes. Like when you taste a bunch of, like, you'll find certain rye barrels. And we've tasted like obscene amounts of barrels now over the last couple of years. And anytime we find one of those barrels that's like really minty, we're always like, all right, make a note on this one. And so when we did Rise of the Robots Extended Cut, we specifically, it was like, this would be what we would drink, if we were pouring for ourselves. We also both tend to drink more high, like higher proof, products dependent upon the occasion, I guess. So I really think Rise of the Robots Extended Cut turned out great. It is a fantastic high proof rye, which I know isn't for everybody, but if, like for people who like it, and do like kind of that minty, like notes to a rye, for me, it's a home run. It's like, I'm very, very happy with the way it turned out. So, and I don't even have a bottle because it was a limited release, right? Like we took it to Bardstown. Um, Troy's coming out in December, and I'm really counting on him to bring me a couple of bottles of Rise Extended Cut.
Yes, because
Yeah.
we are not on shelves yet in Georgia,
Right.
where Charlie lives. We ship from our website to 43 states. So
Okay.
yeah, so we can, and we can ship to Georgia, I believe. So you know
Yeah,
what, Charlie, buy a bottle, all right?
Yeah.
which I've done more than once.
We've actually all bought our own bottles occasionally.
Yeah.
Um, but we ship to 43 states. We're on shelves and back bars in 6 states, about to be 7. So we're in
Okay.
California, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, Alaska, Kentucky, and we're just going to be launching in the beginning of December in Kansas.
Okay. That's exciting. I mean, that's really exciting to see that progress over just a few short years. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, we've been on the market a year. We launched September of 22.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I guess I'm
Yeah.
talking business plan, which is way before the
Business plan
launch.
was
So,
it was
yeah.
it was 2 years of development before we launched. But yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned the tasting for the Rise of the Robots extended cut. So is it simply a cask strength version of the Rise of the Robots, or is it a slightly different blend as well?
It's actually a completely different blend. So
Okay.
same mash bill,
Yeah.
but different
Okay.
barrels, different blends. So our blending team is
Okay.
myself, Charlie, and one of our other partners, Steve Canepa, who plays a lot of different roles. He's our CFO, but he's also as big of a whiskey nerd as the two of us. We really, actually, when Charlie mentioned earlier that we would invite people, or people would try and invite themselves onto our Kentucky trips, and we scared them off, we invited Steve onto one of our Kentucky trips, and we tried to scare him off, and we couldn't. So he's been to Kentucky with us now 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
and he hits his limit. He's like, all right, guys, I'm done for the day. Right. But so the 3 of us are kind of the core blending team here.
Hmm.
And we taste every barrel that we have. We have a lot of barrels. We try and taste them at least once a year if we can. And we have an extensive database of notes on all those barrels. And so we know there are certain barrels that blend a certain way, and we go at it trying to achieve something. So each time we create a new product, we spend a lot of time messing around to get the profile we want, and then we see if
Hmm.
we can recreate it as close as possible with other barrels, so we know this is something we can sustain. Every batch is different, but if we can get it similar enough, and that's sort of what we did. So Rise of the Robots extended cut, that's our most recent product. That was the first blend of that came 2 years after the first blend of Moonlight Mayhem and
Yeah.
regular Rise. So
Okay.
totally different.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to speak to the liquid in the bottle for a second for those listening, because I always mention that I don't have anybody on the podcast that I don't enjoy their whiskey, because that would just to me be kind of selling out a little bit. But I want to speak to it because when I walked up, obviously, like I said, the labels, the posters, it all caught my eye. And anytime you see a good label or a good bottle, I have a couple of bottles that stand out really unique. You always have to say, am I paying for the bottle? Is this going to be a little bit gimmicky? What is this? And when I tried it, it distinctly has a sweetness and a body to it. And you mentioned those awards, so I think those speak for themselves. But for the folks listening who I guess value my opinion for whatever reason, the two things that really stand out to me is the sweetness on the front of the palate, which makes it really inviting, and the body. You're not having to hunt out flavors; they're there. I mean, it really coats your palate with flavor, and I think I'm guessing those are two of the reasons for the success of the whiskey. And I don't want to keep talking about it and making the listeners drool because it's dry January and they might be
Right.
participating. But that's I guess my reasoning behind why I really enjoy, especially these 2 bottles in front of me. For those listening who might want to try that here in February as it's getting closer. So in the spirit of dry January, I want to change gears a little bit. I want to get in the mind of movie lovers just for these last few minutes, and I really want to talk about movies and try to put myself in the shoes of a movie lover, so that people finishing out dry January can watch movies to take their mind off of these bottles that I just reviewed. So I'll ask you guys. I'm very curious. what's your favorite comedy? What's your favorite action movie? And what's your favorite all-time movie? And maybe we'll stagger those in order to keep it back and keep it in one genre at a time. So we'll start with you, Troy. What's your favorite comedy that you've watched?
I tend to lean towards romantic comedies. I mean, I like crazy, fun comedies of all kind. I like sophisticated comedy, but romantic comedies just always hit a note with me. So, like, it would have to be between like When Harry Met Sally and The American President. Those two movies I could watch over and over again. I just love those movies. So, for comedy, those are my choices.
I would
Okay.
have guessed you were going to say The American President, actually. I remember you've watched that a million times. It was funny, like, this is almost like, when Troy said earlier, having to pick between your favorite kids, because, there's
I get
classic
it.
comedies from like a million years ago. And then there's like, what have I seen more recently? I tend to like, like the more like raunchy kind of over the top comedies. I've watched There's Something About Mary a million times. That movie every time will make me laugh hysterically. But at the same time, if I go back, like even predating myself, and I'm pretty old, like I can watch Monty Python movies over and over and over again until the cows come home. Just like there's
Mhm.
you cannot watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail too many times, even
Right.
if you get to the point where you're just saying the lines along with them. So I don't know, one of those, I guess.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I remember, and actually, When Harry Met Sally is on my watch list currently. So I want to give some credit where credit's due. I need to watch that. But also Monty Python and the Holy Grail. When I was in like seventh or eighth grade is when I first saw it, and those movies that I think really kicked off my love for like spoofs, like movies
Yeah.
that are just I don't know if you guys have seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but that's another spoofy
Oh
type
yeah.
movie that's just
I haven't seen
Absolutely.
it. No.
I love that movie. I'm not as much of a movie buff as I am a TV series buff, so I watch a lot of TV shows. But that came to mind when you said that. I'll never forget the first time seeing the killer bunny rabbit scene, and
Oh yeah.
the bunny rabbit jumps up in his. If you're listening and you haven't seen it, you need to go watch that scene. Is what I'll say. But okay, so the next one that I had is action movies. Let me cushion the blow a little bit. I know how hard it is to pick favorites. I get asked my favorite whiskey 3 times a week probably, and I never have a good answer, and the answer's different probably every time. But when I
Right.
say your favorite action movie, what comes to mind? Like what's at the forefront when I say that?
Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Star Wars.
Classic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the greatest movie ever made, and if you go back and watch it, there are times where like, this is dragging a little bit, but it was so meaningful. Like Star Wars after Logan's Run was one of the first movies I saw in the theater, and that movie, when you're that age and in that generation, it changes your life. Like that, something like that could be possible. I watched Star
Mhm.
Trek on TV, but this was totally different, and and I loved like when my son was 4 or 5 years old, getting him to watch Star Wars for the first time and getting him to fall in love with it. And it'll always be extremely special to me.
Now, I am trying to convince my wife to watch all of the Star Wars movies. So, important question. What order do we go in? I have a
Oh.
personal opinion, but what's the order, at least for the six?
All
What's
right.
the
So
order?
I made a definite decision. This is a great conversation because I made a definite decision with my son. And this is my son's 19 now. So this is when he was 4 or 5.
Okay.
You're going to watch him the way I watched him, right? You're going to watch 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And then this was before, 7, 8, 9 or whatever. But,
Hmm.
and that's how we watched them. And he was a little young when we got to what is it, Revenge of the Sith. He that frightened him, so he didn't watch it again for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But so it's so funny. He's 19, he's up at college, he lives with his girlfriend, and he has made his girlfriend watch all the Star Wars movies. Like, it was
Yep.
a big deal. They did it took him a few weeks, right, to
Hmm.
go through it. And he and I had this whole like argument because he went in numerical order. He started at 1 and went all the way up through 9 or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And I was like, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not how it's done. And I'm like, that's not how I raised you.
Yeah.
you know
Right.
but
I
that's
I
how he wanted to do it.
I feel so validated by that because I've gone back and forth with my friends, and you're a writer, so I'm going to go out and say you have more authority on this than my friends do. But I say they were released that way. That's how I'm supposed to watch them. And I did the same thing with Marvel because there's some Marvel stuff that gets a little bit confusing, but I'm like, I'm watching them the way that they were released.
Right.
So that I'm validated by that, and I'm gonna convince my wife to at least watch the first. I said at least watch the first 6. And I guess another hot topic here, while we're on the subject, is what are your opinion on the new ones ever since Disney took over?
Well, so I am not a huge fan of the prequels of 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
That's another reason I talk to my son. I'm like, if you start someone on those and they're not a little kid, you may turn them off before they ever get to New Hope, right? So
Yeah,
because I am not like the Jar Jar Binks and the robots and,
Count Dooku riding his cheesy like
right,
scooter off into the
not a big fan of those movies. Revenge of the Sith got a little better, like it had some more drama to it, and but some of the acting and the writing in those movies. Sorry, George Lucas, because you're a genius, but not in writing those movies. So yeah, no. And I actually was a fan, particularly of sorry, what's it called?
is it Rogue One?
Oh my gosh, no. Well, Rogue One was great, but
I loved Rogue One.
the first of the new ones. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. 7. What was?
Honestly, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head.
I don't know. Ray, the one with Ray, the one
the one where we introduced Ray. Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
totally drawing a blank right now.
I'll look that up as we go, though. But okay, so you like that one a lot. Then.
The Force Awakens. Oh my gosh,
that's it. That's it.
The Force Awakens. Yeah, I loved The Force Awakens. I thought J.J. Abrams did a perfect job of moving the story forward, keeping it like honoring what was there, both visually as well as the writing and the dialogue. But so keeping us anchored in that, but making us feel safe and comfortable to move forward into a new world with it and getting engaging. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I loved it. Just like I loved his remake of Star Trek, which already needs to be remade, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. The next one, not so much. The last one was okay too. I enjoyed them, but I thought the first one was great.
Okay.
Charlie?
Yeah, well, so I really enjoyed the newer ones. That said, you mentioned Rogue One. I think Rogue One is arguably the best Star Wars movie since like Empire Strikes Back. I love Rogue One. I thought it was a fantastic, well-made movie. Like, love the look of it. Love it. It had a great personality to it, and it inspired a great spin-off TV series as well.
Right. Have you finally watched Andor?
I'm still working my way through it, but the episodes I've watched.
Yeah, I'm waiting for him to finish. We have a very strong no spoilers policy between us, and we talk about TV and movies almost every day. So that's why I knew he hadn't quite finished it yet. But yeah, because imagine Rogue One is a prequel that inspired a prequel series, and the series was as good, if not better, than Rogue One.
Yeah,
it's just so.
Yeah,
why
I haven't watched the series, but I know. I mean, when I went to see Rogue One, I was like, that is a really quality film, especially, I mean, there's no secret that at least the past few years films haven't been the greatest in the world, and that one I was just like, that was a really quality movie. So I do want to give Charlie a chance, though. If it's not Star Wars, what is your favorite action?
So I mean, again, like you said, it's hard. You ask on any given day, it's hard to say. And if you asked me yesterday, maybe I would have said Star Wars. But now that Troy has said it, I don't know. The Matrix, like the very first Matrix movie, I can't tell you how many times I went to the theater to see the Matrix and just absolutely loved, like the Matrix was so unlike anything that came before it. Now it feels rote when you see, bullet time and all of that. Now it feels so cliche. But at the time, there was nothing remotely like that in visual effects. And everything about, it became, as they went on, they became convoluted and impossible to follow and understand and all that. But that first one really changed everything. And then, I don't know, I would also say this is a cheat, and I'm going to sound like a total fanboy, but I love the John Wick movies. If you're just talking straight action, they check all the boxes, just like kick ass, like beat up everybody, shoot everybody, stab it. Like that is, and I've watched all of those a million times as well, because they're just so much fun.
No spoilers, because I'm actually watching those over Christmas break when I have time off. I'm going to be watching those with my father, so I'm so excited.
I didn't spoil anything other than like shoot, kick, ass like that. And that's
Right.
if you have
Which
seen the poster, you know what you're in for. Like,
right.
Exactly. I think, yeah, if you've seen the poster, if you've seen videos of Joaquin, or not Joaquin Phoenix, I always confuse the two. Keanu Reeves
yeah,
just training. I mean, I always confuse those two names though because they're so unique. But oh my gosh, seeing him in real life, like shooting the guns, is like, oh my gosh.
yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, both great options. And I will give my seal of approval to those listening trying to get through dry January, the Star Wars movies and the first Matrix, at least. I also, the second two, they kind of decreased for me. Like the second one, I'm like, third one, I'm like,
yeah,
but that first one, like you said, what a movie that gets you just thinking. You're like, whoa, like what is this? So
Yeah.
unique. Like you said, wasn't a cliche yet. A lot of those things they did weren't cliches. Now to round it out, because I do have to let you guys go real quickly, at least. If I say your favorite movie of all time, unless it's one of those ones we already talked about, if I say your favorite movie of all time, what comes to mind?
Do you want to go first, Charlie?
I'll go first and just like take the hit because
Right?
Trey's heard me answer this before. So
Yeah.
my favorite movie of all time that I've watched, deep in my heart, I'm still like that 8-year-old kid that I mentioned at at the top of this, going to the movie theater to see the matinee. And so this is a movie that came out a jillion years, like I don't know, in the early 2000s. But I've
Earlier.
watched it a million times. I will cry at the end every time. Babe, not the baseball player Babe, but the talking pig Babe. I can
Yeah.
watch Babe. If it's on TV, I'll stop. I'll watch it. I'll cry at the end every single time when he says, "That'll do, pig." Like, I absolutely adore the movie Babe.
That's awesome. What a unique pick. Okay. And now
Yeah.
what's
And
yours, Troy?
what Charlie won't tell you is one of the careers we had together and the companies we had together. When we were building that entertainment company for America Online, Charlie was running the interview studio for us, and he got to interview James Cromwell, who was the star of Babe, and got to tell him that story. And so during the interview, Charlie told him that story, and at the end of the interview, what did James Cromwell say to you?
Well, it was actually my very first on camera interview. And I kind of said at the end, like, this was my first interview, how'd it go? And yeah, James Cromwell said, "That'll do, Charlie, that'll do." And it made me very, very happy. So,
Oh my gosh, what a full circle moment. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's a great story. So mine's a quick, easy answer. It's Casablanca. I just think
Okay.
there are very few perfect movies that have ever been made, and I think that movie is perfect. It just,
Okay.
I love watching that movie. And it's funny, Charlie just made a reference to something. When people ask me what my favorite movie is, my favorite bourbon, of course, like we've all said, it's hard. But this is how I define my favorite movie is a movie you can watch over and over and over again. Like you're flipping channels and you come in halfway through and you can't move. You just watch it to the end. It doesn't matter. Right. That is, and
Yes.
I think bourbon is the same way. It's a bourbon you can keep going back to, almost regardless of your mood, just like, oh, well, that's a bourbon I would drink under any occasion at any
yep.
time. So it's a favorite, even if it's not like the highest rated or the most expensive or whatever it is. It's just something you can keep going back to.
What a great way to put that. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind next time somebody asks me my favorite. I'm gonna be like, what can I just drink? The problem is there's a few that I can, but I
Right.
like to go with the knee jerk. The first one that comes to your mind is always the best. And then you overthink it and then you come back to the first one that came to your mind.
What's your favorite bourbon, Chris?
Oh my gosh. Obviously, it's Town at the Edge of
Wow.
Tomorrow.
Well played.
No, these are both excellent bottles though. And I'm really excited to see what you guys have coming out. That's one of the things that's so exciting about this brand is you get to be excited for the storyline and then to try the bourbon. So it's like, or the whatever whiskey it is that you guys are blending. It's very exciting.
Right.
And
so
you have,
before we go, one quick plug.
yes.
Please follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram at Filmland Spirits.
Yes.
And you can also join our mailing list. When you go to our website, you'll get greeted right away to join it. We're constantly sending out coupon codes and specials and exclusives and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. And I will throw that in the show notes as well so that you guys can go check them out. Go give them a follow, look up the storylines, look up the background of these bottles. And if you want to buy yourself one, like I said, I recommend them. I don't have them on the show if I don't recommend them. So definitely give these a try. And you guys have given me some movies that I will maybe save for dry January, or maybe that's when I can convince my wife to watch the Star Wars movies. We'll see.
That's a good
We'll
idea.
see how that goes.
Kill about 15 hours or so.
Yeah, that's a little bit of time in dry January to not be focused on the fact that I can't review any of the whiskeys sitting in my studio that just gather dust.
Right.
But this conversation's been great, guys. I appreciate the background. I love to dig into a brand that I like and really learn about where it came from and learn all those background details. And I know a lot of the people listening do as well. So thank you for this conversation, and thank you guys for both coming on. But I don't want to keep you any longer. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
No,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Whiskey Noobs. If you need more Whiskey Noobs content in your life, make sure you check out our Patreon page in the show notes. And if you like the show, please make sure to leave a 5-star rating or review. It only takes a couple of minutes, and they're way more helpful than people realize. If you want to do tastings alongside the show, make sure you join the email list by sending an email to whiskeynoobspodcast@gmail.com with a subject line that says email list. You'll receive monthly emails with a list of the whiskeys that will be featured throughout the month so that you can buy them ahead of time. You can also find more Whiskey Noobs content on Instagram @whiskey_noobs and on TikTok @Whiskey Noobs Podcast. Once again, thank you guys for listening. The Whiskey Noobs Podcast does not support underage or otherwise irresponsible consumption of alcohol.